Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another edition of the Bruce Exclusive, a Buffalo Rumblings live cast. I'm your host, Bruce Nolan. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Bruce Exclusive. Welcome back. And a special welcome to my partner in crime for this evening's festivities, ladies and gentlemen, J Spence the King, host of the Code of Conduct and the Chop Up on the Buffalo Rumblings live network, in addition to the co-host of the Hump Day Hotline, which you can find right here on Wednesday evenings. Jay Spence, how you doing, dude?
I'm doing well today, man. I'm excited. It's your Christmas, so I'm sure you're doing well today.
Ho, 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 baby. Merry
Yeah.
Christmas. It's a good time. There's gumbo stewing right now on the stove. My wife made some gumbo. We have wings coming. My wife made dilly rolls. I'm not sure if you're familiar with dilly rolls. I don't know if that's a regional thing or not, but they're dill pickles that have been wrapped in chopped beef with cream cheese on the inside. Yeah,
Bruce.
it's a thing. I don't know if it's a thing, but
Now the thing is, now I'm doing my I'm starting a cooking show in September, and I follow your Instagram. We got to figure. I know you're not showing your face. I'm not being the FBI. I don't want to know anything. I got to figure out a way to get you as a guest on that show, man, because you can throw down in the kitchen, man. Your wife can too.
My wife throws down in the kitchen actually a lot more than I do. I kind of specialize a little bit in the meats, and specifically the sous vide and the chicken wings and the air fryer and things like that. That's kind of my thing. But we're going to have some wonderful food tonight before the NFL draft, and we're almost there, man. It's an hour to go. How are you feeling?
I'm anxious. This is the first year that I really don't have an idea of kind of where I think we're going to go. I know what everybody wants to do. I know what you don't want us to do. And I know what I want us to do. So, it's going to be a fun night. It's emotions are high.
Emotions are high for me too. I always get super duper nervous around the NFL draft. I'm not entirely sure why that is. I think that this is the same feeling that I used to get around Christmas, because I was nervous about the presents and I was like, oh man, I sure hope I get something good. I sure hope I can open something that I want to open. And for some reason, I just have that same level of nervousness that comes along with the NFL draft. I might be because I'm afraid we're going to take a running back, but I'm not entirely sure. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to try and hit on three different things. The first one is we're going to try and hit on the reactions to my 259 pick NFL 32 team 7-round marathon of a mock draft that I posted on BuffaloRumblings.com yesterday that included all of the Bills picks for this particular 2021 NFL draft. So for those of you who are watching live, we're going to put it up at the bottom of the screen, and we're going to go through Spence's reactions, and then you guys can give me your reactions in the comments as well. And we're going to chat a little bit about it, starting with the first pick that I made. And the first pick that I made was a small, Brandon Bean would call it a slight, trade up from 30 to 26. And we did that because the Cleveland Browns wanted to trade back. The Browns are an analytically inclined team. They're someone who's always going to be in favor of a few spots of trading back. And Brandon Bean wanted to get up in front of the Baltimore Ravens and the Green Bay Packers to be able to take Penn State edge Jason Owe. Give me your thoughts.
Well, as you were speaking, I'm kind of like looking between both screens I got set up here, and I'm just like watching highlights as well. And I know I tend to fall victim to highlights because I'm not a huge college football watcher. But listen, man, what I've read prior to this, because I read your mock draft earlier this morning, and then started to just read a little other. Listen, this kid is impressive. It's not what I would want to do. So my initial reaction is like, oh, a year of me not being happy. But at the same time, it's something that we obviously need pass rushing. And from what I see, he looks like he has a great motor. Like it just looks like he doesn't stop. Reminiscent to me of Jerry Hughes, not built the same way, but just doesn't stop. And it looks like from what I see, he can stop the run as well, which we absolutely need help with stopping the doggone run, man. We got to stop this run this year.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that probably gets a little bit underappreciated about Jason Owe is that he is a really good run defender. And when he hits an offensive tackle, you can see him pop. Like that strength really pops off. It's not something where it's just bench strength. And one of the things that I constantly harp on with prospects is that the things that are impressive to me aren't necessarily the bench numbers by themselves, because bench numbers are distorted by arm length. That's something I haven't gotten a chance to talk about this draft cycle that I got a chance to talk about previous draft cycles. So I've had a bunch of new listeners since then. So we're going to chat a little bit about it right now.
Okay.
So when you are dealing with bench numbers and people who are really strong, the longer your arms are, the more at a disadvantage you are in the bench, because you're actually pushing that weight over a longer distance. So really what we should be doing is we should take arm length into consideration when we do bench press, because really what you want to know is how many total inches of distance was that amount of weight pushed? Because if you have really short arms, that can be a lot. That can be a really significant difference in allowing you to pump that 225 a larger number of times. Whereas if you have 34.5-inch arms, for example, you are literally having to push that weight farther than someone who has 31-inch arms. And so that's something we should probably talk about a little bit more that we don't, because sometimes you'll see some of these defensive tackles, these one-tech defensive tackles who are short and stocky and really strong, and they have really short arms, and they make a bajillion reps in the bench press. And we go, wow, that's really impressive. And then the same height, same strength people who have much longer arms end up pushing it up a lot less times. It's because they're traveling more distance. So I really think that the whole reps concept when it comes to bench is an issue. And now that we're talking about Owe, I just kind of wanted to get that off my chest.
No, but I mean, but you know what? It's first, it's incredible that you even think that way. And I'm sure there are other people like you, but I don't, you're the only one that I know. Because when I think about bench press, I would never, ever, ever put that, I would never put that part of it in there. I would just be like, man, this guy's a beast because he can, and just be at all at the pure strength behind it. But when you factor in the distance and the weight, and then you look at how other guys, how they grade, he's impressive. I don't know how I feel, but I don't want him. You know who I want, Bruce.
I know who you want. And we're going to get into that. When we talk about best case, worst case scenario, we're going to get into that. And I promise I will not drag you through the mud that much on it, because that would be mean. But specifically about Owe, this is not a what Bruce wants to have happen. This is something that I can see reasonably happening based on trends. And Brandon Beane has been known to have a little bit of drafting arrogance to him. When you draft Tremaine Edmunds, there's some drafting arrogance to him. A lot of people didn't know what position Tremaine Edmunds was actually going to play when he came into the NFL. There were plenty of people who thought he was a 3-4 edge rusher. There were people who thought he was a will linebacker, people who thought he was a Mike. Even after the Bills drafted him, it was like, okay, what are you doing with him exactly? And it was just a ball of traits. It was just a really tall, really beastly, athletic guy. And that's a scenario where Brandon Beane's done it before. He did it with Josh Allen. Josh Allen was just a ball of traits. Tremaine Edmunds was a ball of traits. Jason Owe, ball of traits. You're not drafting him for what you think he is right now. Kenny Riggleman in the comments says, no, please no, not Owe. I'm a Penn State fan and watched him for 3 years of being average. I agree with you, Kenny. I don't think this is a scenario where you're drafting him and you're going, yes, that's a great player we're drafting. You go, no, that's a really great athlete who just started playing football in 2016. That's what you do.
Well, again, so the good things that I mentioned about him, the thing that I see, so when you're saying this isn't something that would make Bruce happy either, that makes me happy because, some of the things that I did see was that he's a frequent, he over pursues a lot. And I know that's coaching. I know that's technique. I know that thing can get worked out throughout training camp and just throughout coaching. But, I'm looking for a guy that can come in and make an impact this year and help us get over the hump. To me, when I'm looking at this guy, I think he's good. Obviously, he's strong. We mentioned his bench press. We mentioned all these other things that he's good in the run support. But I don't think that he's coming in and he's going to take a position right now from one of our starters. I'm looking for somebody to come in and be a day one starter. So yeah, I'm not as happy, but it makes perfect sense.
So let me ask you, when you hear Brandon Beane say he's looking more long-term than short-term with pick 30, does that upset you? Because
It
you're looking at someone to come in and take a starting role right now?
it doesn't upset me because I feel like both can be true. And I feel like GM talk a lot of times they won't necessarily say their entire intentions, So I do think that you obviously want a good player that you feel like can be here for a long time. That will kind of like Josh Allen, that will fall in love with the community, that will fit in, and that will become the identity of the team. But at the same time, I'm also looking for if you. I know it's not like we're just at default. We're not going to be in the AFC Championship again. But when you look at the team and you look at where we are, last year is the last piece of data that we have. I'm looking at that team and I'm saying, okay, what do we need to beat the team that beat us? What do we need to beat the team that beat the team that beat us? I don't think Oweh helps us there.
Okay, that's completely fair. So let's move on to the second pick. The second pick in the draft was somebody who the Bills have been linked to. And it's somebody who, again, fits this idea of athletes who can be coached up. And that's Tyson Campbell, cornerback from the University of Georgia. What were your initial thoughts when you saw the name?
I like it. 100%. Now, I've been pretty critical over the season of Levi Wallace. I've been critical of Johnson. So first, before I even paid attention to see what this guy was about, how he looked on the field, I was just excited that you picked cornerback because it's like, look, we need to upgrade that. Then when I started watching the film, I don't understand, and I'm not a draft guy. I will say that so many times, but I don't understand why he's not considered to be higher than a second round pick.
I think the thing for Campbell is that there are some questions about his ball skills, specifically getting his head around in time. I think that his agility numbers scared a couple people off. He was a really good athlete, but I think they're worried a little bit about, okay, you weren't necessarily the preferred corner at Georgia, and there's some ball skills. It's a little bit like Campbell is to corner what Oweh is to edge, but they're lacking some nuances that go with the position. Now, it's important to note that a lot of times corners are not coached to get their head around. They're coached to play through the hands of the receiver. So this is one of the reasons why understanding what he was being asked to do at Georgia is really important, because then you as an organization can go, okay, where is the gap between what he is and what I would like him to be? And with Oweh, you think, okay, it's not talent, it's not athleticism, it's refinement, it's polish, it's not effort or motor. You said the guy's motor runs crazy hot. The same thing with Tyson Campbell. Tyson Campbell is an athlete who currently lacks some of the nuances associated with playing the position. And if you have someone who can hold down the fort, like Levi Wallace has proven he can hold down the fort, then you don't necessarily have to throw him in there week one. If he's ready week one, so be it. Great. But the second he's ready to take over for Levi, what that does is it gives you something you don't currently have at CB2, which is an athlete. You don't have an athlete. I'm sorry, guys. Dane Jackson's not a high-level athlete at CB2. If he was, he wouldn't have been a seventh-round pick. He's another 4'6", scrappy tackler who's really aggressive, because that seems to be what McDermott likes to torture me with. That's just the way these things happen to go. So Jacob really loves the Campbell pick here in the comments. Kenny really likes the Campbell pick. And Michael really likes the Campbell pick. He loves the traits. Nice pickup in the second tier of cornerback. I do like this cornerback class overall. I like it a lot. I have 7 people who play corner who I'd be comfortable spending the 30th overall pick on, which means that they'll get none of them. That's just the way it's going to go. But the reason why I think that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott would be more likely to go edge this particular year earlier over corner is twofold. Number one, I think that their team pass rush, in the argument between pass rush and coverage, I think their team pass rush. If you look at Sean McDermott's tendencies and you look at his preferences to be able to rush with 4, I do think that he is team pass rush over coverage. In addition, this edge class is not great. And I don't think you can get somebody later. I think that there's a reasonable chance that by the time 93 rolls around, there isn't someone who's going to come in with the traits you want that is going to be able to compete for a meaningful role this year. I just don't think that that's something that is going to be in the cards this particular year. So for me, that's what leads me toward edge versus corner earlier versus corner first and then edge. Where do you fall on that, J Spence? Do you think this is a scenario where you could see a corner and then an edge? Or are you with me? It's edge, then corner.
No, I'm with you 100% that is edge and then corner. I know historically, if you want to look at the way we've drafted, obviously his first pick was Trey White. But I think that, to your point, he really wants to have a defense that you can just rush the 4 guys, and then we can really have some freedom in the back. So the way it's going, though, I think even with the second round pick, Campbell ran a 4.36. I just said somebody who can come in. Now, you're right. He might not be a starter. You know, we might need to develop him a little bit before he can take over for Levi. But that's the speed that we're talking about when you're talking about the Chiefs. That's the speed that you're talking about when we're talking about Tampa Bay. But yep, you're right. I do agree with you about defensive end going first round. I think Brandon Beane is that pass rush that to be able to get to the quarterback with 4 is more important to him at this point than adding that corner in first.
Jacob in the comments says, do you think Brandon Beane just listens to this and picks whatever Bruce doesn't want?
Every time.
So I actually was all aboard the Zach Moss train last year. Very, very early in the offseason, we were talking about the type of running back, just stylistically, the type of running back that I wanted to see pair with Devin Singletary. I famously said, I got a tweet and said, Devin Singletary does not need to be replaced. He needs to be complemented. He doesn't need to be upgraded from, he needs to be complemented. And there was a big discussion on what type of running back, stylistically, what type of running back would you like to see Devin Singletary paired with? And I wrote an article for Buffalo Rumblings, and my conclusion was Zach Moss. Give me Zach Moss. So he's not entirely against Bruce. He just doesn't value cornerbacks the way that I do. Now, he does value the safeties the way I do. I said earlier in the offseason that if I could re-sign either Micah Hyde or Matt Milano, it'd be Micah Hyde. Brandon Beane said, why not both? So he said, why not both? And then he also added Darrell Williams and John Feliciano to that. So that was a pretty good time. So the third pick in my Buffalo Bills mock draft was Aleem McNeil, defensive tackle, North Carolina State. Do you feel like, first off, getting somebody who's a defensive lineman on the interior is reasonable at that pick? And specifically, what do you think about Aleem McNeil?
Well, not only do I think it's reasonable, I like McNeil. Like, I think this guy, I think he's going to develop into one of those guys that can become a Pro Bowl player. I don't think he's going to be Pro Bowl first year. I don't think, second year, nothing like that. But when you watch him, he does have that strength. He's one of those guys that I think has that freakishly athletic, he's one of the guys that you can see if we get him on this defensive line, if you have him next to like a Ed Oliver and you have him next to the way they like to rotate players in and out, and the way they like to have players, maybe, I don't want to say positionless, because the team is always going to have a defensive end for the purpose of being that. But the way they want to be able to plug and play and fit guys in, this guy would be perfect being on the same defensive line with the Ed Oliver, man. I would absolutely love to see this.
Joshua in the comments says, is McNeil capable of playing one tech? Yes. Yes, he is. This is not a scenario where you're trying to get another Quentin Jefferson and have him and Ed Oliver playing out of position. This is someone who can come in, immediately take Harrison Phillips snaps, and potentially platoon with Star Lotulelei, while also giving you pass rush upside that Lotulelei doesn't give you. I think defensive tackle is a sneaky significant need for this team. I was talking to you, Spence, not too long ago, and I said I would make an argument that one tech defensive tackle is the weakest position group on this entire team. And the reason that is because we don't have anyone who is better than reasonable at that position. Harrison Phillips, I would not consider to be a reasonable starting one technique. Star Lotulelei was a reasonable starting one technique, but he's 1 year removed. So he might be a reasonable starting one technique, but there is a chance that if we don't address this fairly early in the NFL draft, that the conversation and the narrative, mark my words on this one, write this one down, that if Tremaine Edmunds doesn't take a step forward this year, one of the contributing factors could very well be we didn't get good play from one technique. I have a feeling it's going to be a priority. This is a general manager in Brandon Beane who was part of a Carolina regime that took Vernon Butler after they already had K'Wan Short and Star Lotulelei. They were like, give me more. Give me more. I will take more defensive tackles on the interior, because they recognize how important it is to keep people off Luke Kuechly. So for me, one tech is a sneaky valuable need for this team. And I think I would be fairly disappointed, if they didn't address it with a player that I thought was reasonably capable of coming in and making an impact fairly early on. That's my opinion. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's how I feel.
Well, no, I agree. Specifically because we talk about how much we'll miss, or how much we did miss Star Lotulelei last season. When the thing is, when you really look at it, even the season prior to when we had Star, it wasn't as if he was out there and it was like lights out play, So we're saying we missed decent play or average play on the defensive line. I need somebody who can develop into a better than average player. And I absolutely 100% think that McNeil can do that, be that player. Everything that I've seen from him, and again, I know it's college, and I don't know specifically how it will translate into this type of defense, but from everything I've seen, I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. I think that when it comes to interior defensive linemen, I would prefer you to either have length or quickness, preferably both, but never neither. And so when it comes to Aleem McNeil, he has the quickness. I wish he had more length. And I know that everyone's favorite one technique, Tyler Shelvin, actually has that. I like Aleem McNeil better than Tyler Shelvin. So let the record stand on that. I don't think that Tyler Shelvin's a bad player by any means. And the third round is a weird pick for the Bills this year. I think that one of the things that's going to be fairly crucial to this third round pick is understanding that you don't pick in the fourth. So if you're going to reach for somebody, now's the time. Because if you need a player who might have an early fourth round grade, just go ahead and take him. Because you don't have a fourth round pick. He's not going to fall to you likely in the fifth. You've got 2 picks in the fifth. You could package those up and go get them in the fourth if you want to, or you could just reach a little bit in the third round. If you're going to do it, now's the time. So that's where I'm at with the first 3 picks. Then there's a big gap. And remember, I traded away the 6th round pick as part of the package to move up 4 spots in the first round, but we still got 2 5th round picks. And with the first 5th round pick, I took Joshua Bledsoe, safety, Missouri. You wanted a big nickel candidate? You got one. Tell me what your reactions were, J Spence.
My first reaction to it was, developmental piece that we could possibly look forward to, maybe replacing. Our safeties aren't getting younger. They're playing great. Obviously, I think we have the best safety tandem in the league, but we have to develop. And I think that's the type of mind that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane have. And I also think that, we lost out on one of our key pieces in Dean Marlowe going over to the Detroit Lions. So you got to have a guy that you can depend on, that you can put in that same place. I don't know if he will be able to play up to that right away. Because to me, when Dean stepped in, there was no drop off in talent. There was no drop off in production. So I would like to see Joshua Bledsoe be that type of player, but I think he could develop into that player. So I would like to see that, but I'm not sure what we're going to do in that same position for this year currently. But yeah, I did like the pick.
Safety is one of those other sneaky needs for this team. This is one of the reasons you keep hearing me say sneaky need over and over again. This is one of the reasons why I don't think the Bills should get cute in this draft. You are never as close as you think you are. 2 or 3 injuries to your team is enough to derail a season, depending on the players. And that's fairly common. You're never one player away. Those things don't exist. So for me, understanding that it's not the time to get cute. Well, Bruce, when is the time to get cute? Never. Never's the answer. Don't ever get cute. Never take your eye off the ball. So for me, understanding that you are one hamstring pull away from singling Jaquan Johnson on the field. And I love Jaquan Johnson. Jaquan Johnson is, in this particular draft class, our Darius Washington from TCU. He's a safety who's undersized. He's not long enough. He's too slow, but daggone, it's just fun to watch him. It's just fun to watch the tape. I love Jaquan Johnson. I gave the pick an A when we drafted him, knowing full well that I don't want to see him take any meaningful defensive snaps. If that tells you anything about the way I feel about Jaquan Johnson, I also don't want him to replace a player who is so good like Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer. The drop-off from Poyer to Jaquan Johnson or Hyde to Jaquan Johnson on the defense might mean more significance as far as drop-off as any other drop-off aside from Trey White. Trey White to Levi Wallace might be the biggest one. But as far as significance to the defense and the impact it would have, but Poyer to Jaquan Johnson, that's pretty high up there. So right now, Dean Marlowe, like you mentioned, Sean McDermott staple, not there anymore. Dean Marlowe is no longer right there. And so for us, I think that getting a third safety would be important. And Bledsoe has the traits that make you think, okay, you know what? Maybe he can be something. Again, you're understanding that traits are a big part of drafting. You don't draft production, you draft traits. I had a disagreement with a gentleman on Twitter the other day who said that production included traits. And I was like, no, it does not. If it did, Timmy Chang would be an all-star. Colt Brennan would be a Hall of Famer. It's just not the way Colt McCoy. Production and traits are very different things. And when you look at Bledsoe, you don't look at what he did, you look at what he can do. And I think he can come in immediately and get meaningful snaps early on in that third box safety sort of role. And he can play man coverage on pretty good players. Now, obviously, if you match him up against Kadarius Toney, he's going to burn him because Kadarius Toney burns everyone. That's what he does. That's why he's going to be a high pick in this particular NFL draft. But I really felt like a third safety is probably something on the docket. Joshua in the comments said, I had a dream that the Bills drafted Trevon Merrick at 30. I wouldn't hate it. That's how strongly I feel about it. I wouldn't hate it. If they drafted Trevon Merrick at 30, I'd be like, okay, I see where you're going with this. I get it. You're going to play a lot of nickel. And we need to talk about the fact that, Taron Johnson got benched for an undrafted free agent from the University of Buffalo before that guy got hurt. So there's not just needs at CB2, there's also needs at third safety if that person's a nickel or nickel corner. So I think that there's something to be said for third safety, not just from a backup standpoint, but also from a nickel standpoint. I don't know if you agree with me or how you feel about Taron Johnson, Spence.
No, I agree with you. Look, he got benched, and on top of him being benched when he was in the game, you know my complaints. It's like every single time there's a first down given up when there's a third and 3, we're giving up 9 yards, and it's either Johnson or Wallace. So for me, the cornerback, the CB2 and that slot cornerback position are positions of need for me. But then when you're talking about your pick here, I think good safety play affects all of that anyway too. So I don't know, Bruce.
Jacob in the comments says, would the Bills be flexible enough defensively to consider running 3 safeties? Just doesn't seem in their wheelhouse. There was playing time for Raphael Bush. There was playing time for Dean Marlowe. So yes, is the answer. I think if you had a better player there and could play the third safety more often, then that would matter. So I think that it's within the wheelhouse if they have the talent there. If it's not a talented player, then they're not going to force it. It's like Brandon Beane said, the big nickel is not a position. The big nickel is a role. That person is still a linebacker. They're still a corner. They're still a safety. It's just a role. And if you have a good player who can fill a role effectively, then you're going to do that more often.
I feel like they had Raphael Bush, and I don't think they did it like for the most part of the season, but I feel like when he was on the roster, the Bills ran a 3 safety set a little bit. I'll go back and check it out and maybe, but I'm almost sure of it. And I think to your point, if they have someone with the talent, now I could be wrong. I'm not a draft guy, so I admit that often. So if this pick, I didn't see him as somebody as a starter, like somebody who could come in and actually take those type of snaps. But if you feel like he can, if you think he's that type of player, by all means, Bledsoe, I would love to see that 3 safety type look, because I thought, if at least if I'm remembering correctly, I feel like it looked good when they had Bush on the field there.
Yeah, I think it's something that they're willing to do if they have the right skill set for it. Jaquan Johnson is not the right skill set for it. So moving along, my second pick in the 5th round was Jack Anderson, interior offensive line, Texas Tech. I really like Jack Anderson. I hope you watched a little bit of him. He's fun to watch. Jack Anderson is a guy who I really feel like Sean McDermott would like. He has a little bit of that Richie Incognito meanness to him. And he is someone who I think, when you look at the technique, I'm not overly impressed. I feel like Jack Anderson survived on sheer power of will for the vast majority of his college career. He just decided, you know what? I'm just going to try really hard to move this guy off of his spot. And of course, being in the Texas Tech offense, a ton of reps in pass protection. And I actually think that's really valuable coming into the league. I said the same thing about Andre Dillard coming out of Washington State, that he's someone who has repped and repped and repped and repped and repped his pass rush stances, because his sets were very vertical at Washington State, and it's just over and over and over again. So if you have an offense who has a vertical sets with your passing attack, he's going to come in and it's going to be like a glove. And I think Jack Anderson has a little bit of that to him as far as just the repetitions go. And Michael says in the comments, is Anderson a wrestler though? Not to my knowledge, he's not a wrestler. So I do think that's a huge, huge knock against him. I didn't see any pictures of him wearing a cowboy hat. And I don't know that if he went on missions trips, and I don't think he was a high school wrestler. So for me, that's huge knocks against him as far as the McDermott trifecta goes. If he's just married and has a couple kids, that would be great. If there's a Bible verse in his Twitter bio, that would be ideal. So I do think that Anderson's just someone who's a lot of fun to watch. And interior offensive line is, again, I'm going to say it again, it's a need for this team, because Mitch Morse is 1 concussion away from being in trouble. John Feliciano is a reasonable guard. Cody Ford wasn't even reasonable. We have not, I've said this to you a couple weeks ago, we have yet to see a moment in Cody Ford's career where he was consistently good. Ever. So could he be good this year at guard? Absolutely could. But you can't bank on that. You can hope for that, but you can't bank on it. And so for me, interior offensive line is a clear need for this team. I wouldn't be shocked to see any of the positions that I have talked about thus far in my mock go in the 1st round. I mentioned that Trevon Merrick at 30, I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be like, okay, that's fine. If, for example, it was an interior offensive lineman like Creed Humphrey at 30th, I'm like, okay, that's fine. If it was an edge, fine. If it's a corner, fine. All of these things are important enough to me to spend a 1st round pick on. What do you think, Spence?
No, I'm with you. I wasn't, so after I watched the film on Anderson, I wasn't 100%, he was one of the guys I thought of as obviously a developmental piece. And obviously I know where we're drafting. I think this part is where my trust and my love for Brandon Beane starts to get me in trouble, because from what I've seen from Brandon Beane over the years now, I'm seeing him draft players that actually can come in the 5th round and actually step in. I mean, look at Matt Milano. We just gave this guy an extension, and he's making, money as if he was drafted in the 2nd or 3rd round, and he's given a certain production. So I have to kind of get myself out of that mode. But at the same time, I feel like after looking at him, I don't think he, to your point, I don't think he will be worse than Cody Ford or even Lamp. We just signed Lamp, and I think Lamp hasn't played up to his potential either. So when you're looking at these guys, if you get a room full of guys who all have the traits and the potential to be great interior offensive linemen, and they're all of them are able to move along the line. So it's not, I think that's a plus for these guys. They're all versatile, and that's what Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott love. So I think that's a plus. I just would really love, I would love to see it, and I would love to see it develop to the point where we get a good starter to go along the line, man. We've been playing musical chairs with our offensive line, and I know we seem to gel towards the end of the season there, but I would like to see us get some just get some guys in here that we can actually get a good unit together for a good 2-3 years, man. I would love to see that, to just to get it for Josh, man. If we can get it to the same point every year, just like I'm excited, Bruce. I'm excited.
I'm excited too, man. And I'm excited about the last pick in my draft. I really enjoyed this pick. I really enjoyed picking Whop Philyor, the slot receiver from Indiana. He's someone who I really, quite frankly, I don't think I've heard his name one time aside from my mock draft during this entire process, mostly because he is a 7th round / undrafted free agent target for me. And I'm familiar with him a little bit because he's in my region. Obviously, I'm more familiar with the Big Ten than I am other conferences in football, just because of my Ohio State fandom and the fact that I'm much more familiar with recruiting processes there and things like that. So first off, his name is Whop. So let's just go with that right off the bat. And when it comes to Whop Philyor, you look at him and you go, okay, how many reps are scoutable? And that's one of the things that's really interesting about watching an offense like Indiana. The vast majority of the routes that you can see in certain games for Whop Philyor are bubble screens. And you go, well, that's not a route I can evaluate. I don't know anything about that guy. It was a packaged play, and he took a couple steps toward the sideline and turned his head to the quarterback and go, okay, if I get the ball, I get the ball. But you start to see some of his competitiveness after the couch. And then you start to see with some of the vertical routes, and you're like, okay, he didn't run great, but he didn't run terribly. And you think to yourself, goodness gracious, being a slot receiver in the NFL is about far more than really significant athleticism. Cole Beasley didn't test very well coming out of college. And Wes Welker didn't test very well coming out of college. And Julian Edelman didn't test very well coming out of college. And Danny Amendola didn't test super well coming out of college. So for me, I think when you look at the developmental slot receiver, you look at competitiveness, you look at agility, you look at their ability to make sudden motions in and out of their break. We're not talking about Jalen Waddle level skills here. We're just saying, is there something there I can work with? He's a hands catcher. He plucks. He's competitive when he blocks. And I really enjoyed watching him. I think if you're going to take a 7th round pick, your chance is, can I do something? Is there something? Because this is one of the things we need to get straight in our heads when it comes to day 3 picks. If that guy's on your roster for 4 years, that's a win, period.
Absolutely.
If they're on your roster, not if they're a significant player, not if they're a starter. We need to make sure our expectations are correct when it comes to the draft in general, because disappointment is a mathematical construct. Expectations minus reality equals disappointment. And you can only control one of those things, and it's your expectation level. If you understand that you're not going to go 7 for 7 or 6 for 6 or 5 for 5 on your draft picks, that's not going to happen. Regardless of how good of a drafter you think Brandon Beane is, that's not going to happen. And if you get a day 3 person who is rosterable and is on your team for 4 years, that's a win, period. They don't have to be anything more than that to be a win. A contributing player is about all you can ask for. And I think that's something you could potentially find in Whop Philyor. Jacob from the comments says he's a whopping 7th rounder, Bruce. The darn straight he's a whopping 7th rounder. What do you think?
What you did there. I like what Jacob did there. I like that. But I'm gonna be honest, he's fun to watch. And, I know, to your point, a lot of his receptions weren't, scoutable, or however you want to term, whatever term you use just then to describe that. But he's so much fun to watch. And could you imagine this kid developing a year or two under Cole Beasley? I would love to take a chance on a guy like him in the 7th round. I think that we have receivers on our team, on our practice squad, that we are still, developing. Isaiah Hodgins is still here that we still really didn't get a chance to see. But last season, last offseason during training camp and practice and all that, everybody was so excited about him in practice, even more so. To Joe's point last night, he reminded me of it, and I went back and looked, and he was right. All the media members were excited about Isaiah Hodgins. So I think we're in a happy place when it comes to like the youth that we have on our team. I think that they're still looking to add youth to our wide receiver room. I think adding a guy to our slot position would be great. We have Gabriel Davis is going to do a lot of good things. I think he's going to be a very, very key piece to this team for a long time. but Cole Beasley's not going to be here forever. And I don't think those are the same type of players. When I look at Cole Beasley, we're not going to be able to replace him with Gabriel Davis. We're not replacing him with Isaiah Hodgins. They're different type of players. I don't think that right off the bat, WAP is that kind of player. But I could see him learning and developing under somebody like Cole.
We're going to take a couple questions from the comment section right now. J.O. says, Bruce, what would be the most shocking selection within the realm of possibility, not like punter, tonight? I think tight end would be the most shocking thing for me because I don't think there's a tight end worth the 30th pick in the NFL draft. I don't think it's Freiermuth. I'm not nearly as high on Freiermuth. In fact, Freiermuth might not even be my tight end too. So I think the most shocking thing for me would be a tight end at 30. Spence?
Yeah, when you put it that way, when you word it that way, yeah, I would say tight end too because the value wouldn't be there. I could literally see them taking pretty much almost, any major position that you would feel that we have a need of, cornerback, safety. I could see them taking something if the value is there. I don't think tight end is there.
Richard Rush in the comment section says, Bruce, what do you think of Dwayne Estridge? Dwayne is a newly converted wide receiver. Dwayne Estridge is an older prospect who I think has a lot to learn, and you just wonder, is it going to come for him? There's a big divide in the scouting community on Dwayne Estridge because he was putting people in the blender at the Senior Bowl, and we were like, oh, okay, I see you there. I see you. But Senior Bowl drills are really, really slanted toward the offensive players because there's no scheming defense around him. So you can't pass off a receiver to somebody over the middle who's going to help you out. There's no understanding of space. It's really, really, really slanted toward offensive players. It's a little bit like playing one-on-one basketball in the sense that it's very slanted toward the person who knows where he's going because you have the ability to function in space in the sense that the defender has to defend the entire field and the offensive player has all that available to him. Dwayne Estridge is one of those players where I wouldn't hate it, but I would like it probably a lot later than he's actually going to end up going. Alex says in the comments, what positions would still need to be plugged or addressed in free agency if your mock reflected what happens over the next few days? Spence, I'm going to let you follow me up on this one, but if this mock were to come to fruition, I think that there is a probable, reasonable chance that offensive tackle would probably need to be something that I would want to see addressed because I'm not a believer that Bobby Hart is ready to take over in the event something were to happen to an offensive tackle. I think that if this happened, I think that linebacker depth is probably something I'd want to see a little bit, another body or two in that scenario. And I think if this happened, I still might want another safety if this were to occur like this. I think that maybe a free agent tight end would be nice to just get another body in there because, Tommy Sweeney, of course, is coming off myocarditis. And I really think that you probably need another body there. I don't know. What do you think, Spence?
I agree with you on every single one of those things. The only other part that I would add to that is I would still personally, I don't know who's out there as far as free agency. I don't know I would still actually want the Bills to still take a look at a running back as well. Just even if it's for competition's sake in training camp, I would still want to take a look at running back in free agency.
Is there a specific running back that's still out there that you would look at, or is it just kind of a let's just dabble and see what we can find?
Just right now, I don't know who's still available. But no, I don't think personally, I don't think the running back room is complete. So I think that's for the type of offense that I would like to see the team running, from the type of offense I think the team wants to run from seeing them last season. They need a guy. They really need a guy.
Okay, Spence, you and me right here. Andrew says, if the best edge and cornerback left are 30 are Asante Samuel Jr., Peyton Turner, and Eric Stokes, who do you pick? Earlier in the process, I probably would have said Stokes. Now I probably say Asante Samuel Jr.
Yeah, I'm going Samuel Jr. all day. Okay. It's not a question.
All right, we're going to move on to the next topic, best case, worst case. We're going to start with worst case because I want to end on a positive note. You can't end on a note. Give me your worst case scenario in the comment for tonight. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be the Bills. This could be Aaron Rodgers getting traded to the New England Patriots. What is the worst possible thing that you can think would happen that by the end of tonight you would think all is lost? The world is over. I'm going to cry myself to sleep. Tell me in the comments. And Spence, you tell me right now, what's the worst thing that you think could happen tonight for you as a Bills fan?
For me as a Bills fan, I think I'm going to go with your scenario that you actually said. It doesn't have to actually be New England. If Aaron Rodgers makes his way to the AFC East, so I don't want to see him in Miami. I don't want to see him in New England. I'm not afraid of the Jets, but I don't want to see him there either. I've seen him without weapons. I've seen him with weapons. I don't want to see him in the AFC East. So anything that have to do with Aaron Rodgers being traded to my division, I want no parts of it. Zero.
So funny story about that. I was thinking a little bit about this as the news was breaking that Aaron Rodgers was in conflict with his team, the Green Bay Packers. And I thought to myself, I actually wouldn't mind having Aaron Rodgers in the AFC. I just don't want him in the AFC East. And I'll tell you why. I think that Aaron Rodgers in the AFC just increases your variance on the type of team you could face in the AFC Championship. Because I don't want to run into a scenario where there's one team that you can't get past. So if I get more cracks at teams that could potentially take down the Chiefs, because the NFL is about matchups. It's not just about talent level. So I'll give you a great example. Let's say Aaron Rodgers goes to the Steelers. Okay. Just for a great example. Does that give them an opportunity to knock off the Chiefs? Maybe. Could you see a scenario where the Steelers could knock off the Chiefs if Aaron Rodgers was their quarterback? I can. Do you think the Bills have a better chance of knocking off the Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs or the Aaron Rodgers-led Steelers? Now, all of a sudden, there's a different variance involved with the type of team that you might face if you make it to the AFC Championship. So I wouldn't really hate it if you went to the AFC. I would just kind of hate it if you went to the AFC East. For me, personally, worst case scenario is trading up really high for a running back. Even if you traded a little bit for Travis Etienne, you went up from 30 to 25 or something, and you traded a sixth and a fifth next year, it's still not that bad. When you get into the spot where you're trading day 2 picks to go up and draft a running back, the value already wasn't great. But one of the things that proponents of taking a running back at 30 said to me was, it's not a high pick. Well, if you trade a lot of assets, it now is a high pick because you could have used that to get something else. So if you're going to sit there and tell me that one of the things that you like about the argument of taking Travis Etienne, for example, at 30 is, Bruce, it's not that high of a pick. And then you trade a first, a third, and a fifth to move up. Well, now all of a sudden it is a higher pick. Now you're not taking a running back at 30. You're taking a running back at 21. So that's the thing that really messes with the value, because I already don't think it's good value. It just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. I think, quite frankly, trading up that high and then taking Javonte Williams might be worse, or trading up that high and taking Najee Harris might be worse, because at least Travis Etienne gives me a dynamic that I don't currently have. So I think trading up high and taking a running back that isn't Travis Etienne might be the worst case scenario for me possible.
I could see that. If I'm not going to go with the Aaron Rodgers thing, then for me, so I feel like my reality of worst case is going to come true, because I absolutely would love to see the Buffalo Bills draft Travis Etienne. A couple of days ago, I was all on the Caleb Farley train, and I kind of still am. I would love a cornerback there at 30 if he falls, and I know there's some questions about health still. I would love to get Travis Etienne, and it's not because I got a chance to interview CJ Spiller. It's not because the Bills were linked to be possibly moving up to try and trade for him or whatever. When you watch him, Bruce, and I know you've watched him, and I know you can understand why I fall in love with him, and I also get why you're saying no, don't do it. But Bruce, man, Bruce, come on. I know you see it. I know you see it, Bruce.
This is the thing you have to understand is I didn't watch Travis Etienne and come away thinking this is a bad football player. I think Travis Etienne's a perfectly fine football player. I compared him to Miles Sanders, who is a good running back. I don't think he's CJ Spiller. I don't think he's Christian McCaffrey. I don't think he's Alvin Kamara. I think those are terrible comps for Travis Etienne. I think Travis Etienne is a bursty, contact balance running back. He's not a overly shifty running back. He's not a stop on a dime, make 7 people miss kind of running back. That's just not typically his game. And so Alvin Kamara, probably not a great comparison for him. I understand the receiving game scenario, but Etienne's faster than Kamara is. they're not the same kind of running back. I actually think Miles Sanders is a fairly reasonable comparison. I like Miles Sanders, but I would not trade a first, a third, and a fifth for Miles Sanders. And so if I wouldn't trade that for Miles Sanders, then I'm not going to trade that for Travis Etienne. Now, I like Travis Etienne, and if the Bills were to pick him, I'll go, okay. Like I'm like, I don't think it's appropriate value, but okay. There's tons of things I didn't think were appropriate value. I didn't think Jake Fromm in the fifth was appropriate value. I didn't think Jake Fromm was draftable. So for me, yeah, no, I was not a Jake Fromm guy at all. And
we agree there.
I think that a year later, I'm looking pretty smart with the Jake Fromm not being draftable scenario, because the Bills weren't comfortable with him being a backup quarterback and had to go out and spend money on Mitch Trubisky. And so for me, if your fifth round quarterback isn't even okay to be a backup year two, that's probably a bad pick. So for me, it's not about whether or not he's a good player. It's about whether or not it's appropriate value. I think that if you get Travis Etienne at 61, I'm still not going to love it, but I'm going to be like, okay, I get it. And in my mock draft, you'll notice I didn't have any running backs go in the first round. And I know that was the hottest take in all of my mock drafts. The hottest take was no running backs went in the first round. And it's not because I don't think they should. It's because I think last year's running back class was better than this year's running back class. And last year, all the running backs went off the board between 32 and 64. That was the J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Cam Akers, Jonathan Taylor. I think that group was better than this group. So for me, I just don't think it's appropriate value. I get it. It's not a nightmare. Taking Travis Etienne at 30 for me is not a nightmare. Trading really high up and taking Najee Harris might be for me, because at least I get something with Travis Etienne in that explosive quality that I don't get with the other ones. In the comments section, I just had New England trading the farm for Aaron Rodgers, and I just had New England getting Trevor Lawrence. Folks, when I said nightmare, I meant nightmare that you could reasonably have, not nightmare that is induced by a crazy maniacal scientist to come into your dreams and destroy your brain. Because that's essentially what just happened.
Not even Sonny Weaver Jr. could do that. Not
even Sonny Weaver Jr. could pull that off. We're thinking Sonny Weaver Jr. is out of here trading all sorts of crazy things. 3 seconds for the number 6 overall pick or some crap like that. I'm like, come on, man. What are you doing? Luke says he's team do nothing at running back. Luke's one of my guys, so he knows he's team do running back. No running back at all.
Real quick though,
go ahead.
I just feel like, because you compared him to Miles Sanders, and I feel like there are comparables. He's a whole lot better than Miles Sanders.
Really? Why? Do you not like Miles Sanders?
I do like Miles Sanders, but he's better. You think Miles Sanders is a better back than Etienne?
No, I think they're very similar. Tell me what you think Miles Sanders does lesser than Travis Etienne, because they're similar sizes, they're similar speeds. They both are contact balance and breakthrough angles kind of people. Neither one of them is a stop on a dime, make you miss, right? They both have questions about some of their decision-making when they push the line of scrimmage, but they can break off a 90-yard touchdown run randomly in the middle of a third quarter that can change a game. Tell me exactly what you think their differences are.
I just think Etienne has better vision. I think he has better hands by far. Like when you factor in the fact that he can catch and you put him on the line, not that Sanders didn't do that. He was a good receiving back, very good. But I mean, I think that Etienne is one of those guys that can actually end up grading out to be one of those backs that I'm not at all comparing him to other receiving backs like McCaffrey or whatever. But I'm saying like he's one of those guys you can literally just say, you know what, just line up, you know. I don't look at Sanders as being as much of a threat as I look at Etienne.
Jo in the comments section says 1 A- level guard would do more for us than Etienne. I'm not gonna say it, but I'm gonna say it. Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. Creed Humphrey might do more for the running game than Travis Etienne. I'm not sure, but we're almost running out of time because unfortunately we have such great comment sections that they're pitching me all these horrible ideas that are now embedded in my brain, and I'm gonna need to eat some gumbo when I'm done here just to make sure that I can clear that from my memory. Best case scenarios. Before we get out of here, we're going to end on a high note. Best case scenarios, ladies and gentlemen. While I'm waiting for those in the comment section, Canned Utopia in the comments says, how much value do you think the Bills would get for Singletary? Almost nothing.
Yeah.
Almost nothing. Maybe a late day 3 pick. Maybe. but you're not going to get back what you spent on him, which is a third rounder. You're probably not going to get a fourth. You might get a fifth or a sixth. You're probably going to get sixth or seventh. Maybe. There's just not a lot of value there for somebody. Because think about it this way. A 6th round pick. Okay, I give a 6th round pick for Devin Singletary. Javian Hawkins might be there on day 3. So would I just rather spend that pick myself if I'm a team who needs a running back? So I just don't think there's a lot of value for trading running backs in general, especially not someone with limited tools the way that Devin Singletary has. So best case scenario for Andrew is Elijah Vera Tucker and ETN. Oh, no. He's saying Elijah Vera Tucker is ETN times 2. Actually, I love that. I love Elijah Vera Tucker. If he is the pick of 30, I would be over the moon. Joshua says Greg Newsome. Come on, buddy. I love Greg Newsome. I think Greg Newsome has the best hips of any corner in this draft, including Patrick Surtain, who I openly admitted was like watching not safe for work stuff. So I'm really good with Greg Newsome. J.O. says Bills get Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Newsome. I don't know how you pull that off. I think you trade next year's one, I probably to pull it off. So that might not necessarily be a dream scenario for me. What about you, J Spence? What's your dream scenario? Is it Travis Etienne at 30?
No, my dream scenario would be Farley. If he's healthy. I mean, and honestly, right now we're just going into the draft. I get it, but Farley, if we could get a legit, like, to me, Farley's he's a CB1. So if I have 2 CB1s on my team, I'm with it. That's dream for me.
Okay. So Farley, you concerned about the back issues? Maybe he might need to have another surgery.
That's what I'm reading now. So now I have that concern because of, the trusted sources that are saying that a bunch of GMs around the league think that he'll need another surgery. So if he has that back concern, then that's going to be rough for him. But I mean, I think he's impressive, man.
Okay. So in the comments, we have David saying, if New England gives up a Chicago offer for Wilson cost for Rodgers, I'm okay with it. Allen better than Rodgers, and the rest of the team will be mediocre. Oh, wow. I'm not sure I'm willing to say Josh Allen's better than Aaron Rodgers at this point in his career. Aaron Rodgers did just win an MVP award. I think that if you are saying, would I trade Josh Allen for Aaron Rodgers right now, then you have the benefit of longevity. You can say, Aaron Rodgers, how much time does he have left? But just straight up, you've got 1 year to win. Aaron Rodgers or Josh Allen. I'm
taking Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers is the best guy I've ever seen play football at the quarterback position. Now I think it'll change. Obviously we got these young guys coming in doing the things that Aaron does, but man, Aaron's incredible.
Jacob says Creed Humphrey and Melifonwu the first 2 rounds. I'd be thrilled.
That'd be great.
I would be absolutely thrilled with Creed Humphrey and Melifonwu. If I had to, Melifonwu is a great fit. In my mock, I didn't get a crack at him because Seattle took him at 56. And I had to be intellectually honest in my mock. I couldn't just say, I'm going to have all these teams pass on these players so I can get them at 61. And when you look at the Seattle defense, Ifeatu Melifonwu fits really well in that scheme. And that's the same thing that makes him fit in the Bills scheme. A lot of those cover 3 quarters sort of scenarios, the length, the aggression, all that stuff makes him fit in Seattle just as much as it makes him fit in Buffalo, which is one of the reasons why I just don't think he's going to be there at 61. Now, one of the things you could see is Seattle trade back from 56 because they only have 3 picks in this draft. So if they trade back and they end up behind the Bills, that gives the Bills a lot better shot at getting Ifeatu Melifonwu at 61. Gentlemen, we did it. Comment section. Thank you for being here. J Spence, thanks for being here, man. Did you have a good time?
I did, man. I did. I learned some things. You had me looking at film and reading about players. So I learned some things. Thank you.
The draft is about to start, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for spending the last hour before the draft with me and Spence. And thank you for making this, which is my first live Bruce exclusive on YouTube ever. You were a part of it, and you made it pretty easy because you were contributing. So thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for everything that you do. In honor of my guest today, I am going to sign off with this. Go in peace, love each other, stay positive, test negative. Thanks a lot, guys.
Go Bills.